The ready room smelled like warm metal, old coffee, and jet fuel baked into the vents. Screens buzzed overhead, each glowing with flight plans and sortie grids, the rhythm of carrier life running smoothly without her. Captain Tessa Knox sat at the edge of the room. Quiet. A presence without weight. Her black Air Force helmet rested on her lap, matte and unmarked, its surface catching none of the overhead glare. Around her, the Navy pilots spoke in shorthand and inside jokes, names and references that bounced between lockers and benches like well-rehearsed script. The mission board updated with a soft chime. Flight rosters slid into view, bright blocks of names and call signs lighting up beneath the carrier emblem. Her name wasn't there. It hadn't been yesterday either. One of the lieutenant's brown flight suit, boots half-zipped, glanced over at her and nudged the guy beside him. The joke came easy. Guess the Air Force sends observers now. You know, for the scenery. Someone else laughed without looking at her. Not much for fast movers out here anyway. Not unless you're planning to outfly radar buoys. Tessa didn't respond. She kept her posture still, one boot planted, the other tucked behind slightly, just enough to angle her body toward the board without leaning forward. Her gloved hand rested on the helmet in her lap, fingers motionless. Her hair was pulled back tight under the headset band slung around her neck. No one had asked if she wanted audio feed access. It didn't matter. The flight lead stood by the briefing wall, marking projected intercept zones with a red stylus. The room paid attention. A few pilots nodded along. She had read the same deck plan hours earlier, cross-referenced it with weather patterns, and noted the shift in ocean current that would drag the pirate routes west. None of that made it into the presentation. She kept it to herself. In the corner, a forgotten coffee pot hissed as it burned through the last inch of brew. A tech walked in, dropped a stack of vests by the lockers, and walked out again. The scrape of boots and the occasional slap of a Velcro strap echoed too sharply. It was the kind of noise that marked readiness, even if only for show. When the final names were read, the lead paused halfway through the exit sentence and tossed a backward glance in her direction. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. It wasn't on the board. She reached up, adjusted the chin strap that wasn't buckled, then lowered her hand again. Her glove brushed the helmet, just slightly, fingers pressing down like she was holding something in place. Not a thought. Not a reaction. Just the weight of being exactly where she was supposed to be, even if no one else believed it yet. 5 seconds later, the ready room cleared. One pilot clapped another on the shoulder and made a joke about landing beers. Tessa stayed seated. The screen above her flickered once, updated without her name again. She didn't move. Her hand remained on the helmet, firm now. She wasn't in the plan. Not yet. The interior of the freighter was dim and metallic, lit by red strips running along the ceiling like veins. The corridors smelled of oil and salt, too clean for a vessel pretending to be commercial. Behind sealed bulkheads, Navy SEALs moved with practiced rhythm. Suppressed rifles held low. Steps matched to soft radio clicks. Nothing wasted. Nothing spoken twice. Lieutenant Mason Drake stood by the forward hatch, watching the last boat team descend the rope ladder. He had already reviewed the boarding plan 3 times. The dhows drifted close, their outlines barely breaking the horizon line in night vision. Comms stayed quiet except for encoded updates. 1 green flash, then 2. Teams were on board. Down below, in the ship's false cargo hold, stacked crates marked as mechanical spare parts covered weapons lockers. The fake merchant manifest lay rolled on a table near the encrypted radio set, a paper form with fake signatures and inventory numbers that matched nothing real. The operation was technically unauthorized. That was part of the point. On deck, the moonlit sea rippled in long, patient lines. No surf, no spray, just glide and shadow. The boarding went like a simulation. The first dhow was empty of resistance, its crew already zip-tied and unarmed. The second had 1 man standing at the wheel, hands raised before anyone said a word. He offered no resistance. He barely blinked. Inside the dhows, The nets were folded clean. No blood, no signs of weapons, no signs of cargo, either. One of the SEALs brushed a tarp back to check a fish bin and paused. It was full of ice, but the ice wasn't melting. The engine under his boots gave off heat. That shouldn't happen this long after idle. From his vantage on the freighter, Drake watched through thermal overlay as his team cleared the third vessel. No shots, no movement. Everything read as clean, the kind of clean that made him nervous. The last dhow hovered just offshore, maybe 30 meters too close. It hadn't moved since the start. One of the SEALs radioed a ping. No response, just the glow of a cabin light, faint and unmoving. Drake lowered the scope, glanced at the manifest rolled near his elbow, and frowned. The op had gone too well. No friction, no weight. Too smooth, too quiet. The last of the SEALs climbed back aboard the disguised freighter, boots clanking on the damp metal gangway. One of the younger operators grinned as he pulled off his gloves, tossing them onto a crate. "Easiest night we've had in months," he said to no one in particular. Another gave a quiet chuckle and started securing gear. The comms channel remained calm, just the occasional squelch from encrypted handsets. Then a single sharp tone rang out from the bulkhead terminal. At first, no one moved. The sound repeated, a long, drawn-out pulse that didn't belong to any friendly code. One of the SEALs leaned in, brow furrowed. "That's not ours." Another checked the data stream. "Looks like an old fishing beacon," he muttered. "Might be a loop from he didn't finish." Up on the bridge, the radar screen came alive. Blips flashed across the outer ring, faint at first, then multiplying fast. Boats, dozens of them, closing in from 3 directions. Not civilian markers. Their signatures were tight and erratic, like high-speed craft running light. Drake was already shouting before the first one hit visual range. "Stations now. Lock positions. Port side flanking." His voice echoed across the open deck as SEALs scattered into cover. Below, the ship's interior lights shifted from red to amber. Someone tripped the alarm system manually. Outside, the calm sea erupted. Speedboats ripped across the water, wakes frothing white behind them. On the nearest deck, a pirate gunner stood braced against the recoil of a mounted RPG, already sighting down the hull. The first blast hit low on the freighter's stern. Metal screamed. A fireball punched upward, flaring against the dark. Shrapnel carved along the railing, and a secondary craft lashed out, returning fire too late. Another boat exploded. One of the support Zodiacs was torn apart and vanished in seconds. Smoke bled across the waterline. Radios filled with overlapping commands. No one could see the full picture. The operation had collapsed. And still, out on the edge of the wreckage, the original dhow drifted. It hadn't moved, but the flare of light now revealed something on its hull paint. Faint, in angular characters. Not civilian, not random. They hadn't stumbled into a pirate route. They had been drawn in. It was never about the cargo. The Tactical Operations Center was thick with artificial light and tension. Screens covered the walls, each filled with red outlines and shifting threat indicators. The convoy's position blinked near the center, surrounded now by fast-moving pings from pirate boats closing in. The map glowed like a trap in real time. Beneath the noise of processors and filtered air, voices competed not in panic, but in protocol. "Do we have positive ID on origin?" one officer asked, half-turned from the radar feed. "Not confirmed. Could be non-aligned militias," another replied. A third leaned in. "They're in international waters. ROE still applies." The commander at the center of the room crossed his arms. "No launches without clear authorization. Last thing we need is a misfire escalation." From the back of the room, Captain Tessa Knox stood silent. Her flight suit still held the faint creases from readiness she hadn't used. Her arms were loose at her sides, her posture straight, her gaze fixed on the radar display. One of the SEAL team's signals flashed intermittently, then cut out. On the open comms feed, a call broke through. "We are taking direct fire, repeat. Multiple boats. We need air now." "Hold that," the commander snapped. "We don't know who's on those boats." "We know who's shooting at ours," a junior officer murmured. There was a brief silence. Then a hesitant voice from the far end. Should we prep the flight deck at least? Not unless you want to explain to D.C. why a Navy carrier scrambled over an unverified threat. Tessa didn't flinch. She watched the outer ring of blips close another 10 nautical miles. Still no scramble order. Still no movement from the launch roster. She spoke once. They won't last 10 minutes. The commander turned sharply. That's not your call. Captain. She didn't reply. She had no need to. Her boots moved cleanly across the floor as she turned and walked out. Behind her, another officer started debating radio protocol with an intelligence chief. Someone called for a legal advisor. Voices tangled again, each defending caution as policy. Tessa walked past the launch board. Her name wasn't on it. She looked once, then looked away. The hallway ahead was quieter, the lights less harsh. She kept walking, toward the elevator that would take her to the flight deck. Behind her, the room kept talking. Tessa Knox didn't speak as she moved through the corridor. The lights buzzed faintly above her, but she didn't hear them. Her boots hit the deck with the same cadence as always measured. Precise. Quiet. She took the long way to the hangar. Not to delay. Just to stay out of the briefing room still full of noise and doubt. The locker was unoccupied when she reached it. No one noticed her step inside. No one stopped her. Her flight suit was already secured. She adjusted the seal at the collar, pulled her gloves tighter. The helmet black, matte. Regulation Air Force issue waited on the bench where she had left it hours ago. She lifted it in one clean motion and didn't look at herself in the mirror once. Out on the deck. The late sun stretched orange across the ocean. Shadows ran long between parked aircraft and the guiding lights of the launch rail. Tessa crossed the steel surface like a ghost. A few heads turned. One tech squinted as she passed. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She didn't look at him. She went straight to her bird. The F-16 sat where it always had, parked under borrowed orders, tethered to standby cables, ignored. She climbed the ladder without a word. Once in the cockpit, her movements were mechanical, practiced. Oxygen feed check, flight trim standard, nav stack locked to short band manual. She flipped the radio input off entirely, then on again, then off. No tower call. She didn't need it. Below, one of the senior deckhands stood frozen by the wing. His eyes flicked from her canopy to the tower and back again. Then, slowly, he gave one nod. It was barely more than a shift in posture, but it was all she needed. Hydraulics whined. The engine spun. A tech nearby called in confusion over comms. Vapor's bird just lit up. She didn't log flight. Did anyone clear? In the control tower, voices overlapped. Someone demanded a halt. Someone else called her name. One voice shouted, "Get her off that ladder," but she was already off it. Strapped in, canopy down, full ignition underway. Inside the ready bay, she passed the launch board once more. The old tape still read, AF Observer. She peeled it off, held it for a second, then pressed it flat against the wall. She didn't write anything else. Left the slot blank. She advanced the throttle. The F-16 rolled forward. No fanfare. No countdown. The catapult launched her into the wind without authorization. The afterburner lit the deck in a flash of fire and shadow, and she tore west toward the horizon before the tower caught up. In the talk, a confused voice asked, "Where the hell is she going?" No one answered for a moment. Then one voice, quieter than the rest, said, "She's already gone." The ocean blurred beneath her as Tessa Knox held the F-16 at wave height, hugging the surface tight enough that sea spray flecked across her canopy. The radar filled with noise heat, movement, half-shadow contacts scattered across the water like broken glass. She tuned them out, one by one, narrowed it to what mattered. Targets within 100 meters, patterned arcs, firing signatures. Her fingers hovered over the stick. No chatter, no call sign. The deck of the freighter flashed into view ahead, partially on fire, smoke curling from the stern. Gunfire sparked in short bursts from the skiffs below. She saw one SEAL hunched against the railing, dragging another man back behind twisted metal. A third boat angled wide with a mounted launcher already pivoting toward the hull. She didn't wait. Throttle down. Nose in. HUD flared red over the first pair of boats as they turned broadside into her line. Her thumb hit the release, and the cannon fired short, hard, mechanical. No scream, no roar, just controlled impact. 2 bursts punched into the nearest boat's deck, tearing straight through the hull. It flipped once before vanishing into steam and black water. The second tried to veer left, but its engine caught flame before the turn completed. Debris showered outward. Wakes went jagged. Down below, a voice shouted over comms, "That's not Navy." The sound of it was half disbelief, half hope. She gave no name, no introduction. Her voice came flat through encrypted feed. "Splash 2, feed next target." For the SEALs, it was the first clean signal in 10 minutes. She pulled up into a hard bank, cutting between rising smoke and the edge of the ship's wake. Wind tore along her canopy. The heat shimmer from the burning deck warped the horizon just enough to blur sea and sky together. For 3 seconds, nothing was visible but gray and fire and salt. Below, Lieutenant Mason Drake held position behind the ruined lifeboat. He looked up as another pirate skiff started turning away, gunning its engine back toward the horizon. The siege had been airtight 10 minutes ago. Now it was breaking apart, and the sky belonged to someone else. The heat came in waves off the burning wreckage, curling through the broken railing where Lieutenant Mason Drake crouched, pressed flat against the scorched bulkhead. His second, Reyes, pulled a fresh mag from his belt with fingers trembling from exertion. Smoke burned in their lungs, and the enemy skiffs were still closing in. The last call to command had gone unanswered. Static. Nothing more. Then a new voice cracked through the encrypted channel. Female. Unshaken. Not Navy. Vector Delta 6. Pirate gunboat marked. Estimate 30 meters off your 2. Confirm friendlies behind forward wreckage. Drake jerked upright behind cover. Confirmed. 3 up. 2 mobile. Who am I speaking to? Doesn't matter, came the reply. Stay behind cover. I'm coming through low. 2 seconds. Then silence. Above the din, the roar returned a rip through the air so close it vibrated the steel under Drake's boot. Her jet blurred past overhead, followed by the sharp punctuation of cannon fire. Drake peeked up just in time to see a pirate skiff cut in half. Debris lifted into a cloud of mist and smoke. A cheer went up from Reyes quick, ragged, but no one looked away from their sectors. Tessa Knox adjusted altitude by hand, eyes darting between her HUD and the sea clutter blinking along the radar's edge. Her hands were steady, her tone unchanged. Next target at grid 47 Bravo. Confirm no friendlies on open deck. Drake answered without hesitation. Confirmed. All internal. Fire in 2. Again, the noise, then fire. She was never visible for long, just a blur in the smoke, a sudden shadow slicing the sky. But each time her voice came through, it anchored them. Clear. No ego. No title. Just direction. Reyes tapped Drake's arm. Command's still dark. You want me to try the Navy net again? No, Drake said. He kept his eyes on the horizon. We've got her. Her voice returned. Position status. Holding east of wreckage, ready for mark. There was a pause, just enough to hear the shift in engine pitch above. Mark in 3, stay low. The comms went quiet. Then came the thunder. The hull of the freighter leaned hard to port, its metal frame torn and scorched from the earlier barrage. Water lapped along the lower deck, the tilt just enough to keep the surviving SEALs pinned beneath the overhang where the structure still held. It wasn't meant to provide cover, but it did, just barely. Lieutenant Drake crouched low, eyes on the outer edge of the smoke field, where visibility ended and death usually waited. From above, Tessa Knox scanned the edge of the plume. Her HUD flickered from target to interference, the heat from the fire blinding the autolock. She flipped to manual tracking, tilted the bird lower, and caught movement in the gap. One skiff, pushing wide, fast and light, but it wasn't retreating. It was repositioning. A heavier launcher mounted at the stern. The weapon crew was already standing, Timing was seconds, maybe less. She throttled down and dipped altitude again. The F-16 dropped into the smoke line. The temperature jump lighting her cockpit in amber as sensors warned of proximity loss. She ignored it. Inverted flight gave her just enough sightline under the bloom. The deck of the freighter curved beneath her. From this angle, it looked like a broken ramp tilted, torn, and still holding shape. She adjusted trim, airspeed steady, sea spray struck the canopy, dots racing past in streaks. The pirate gunner rose, the launcher tilted. She fired. The cannon burst slammed into the skiff in a single tight line. One round detonated the launcher. The others tore through hull and man alike. The explosion was abrupt, jagged, and final. The boat folded in half before sinking, flames still licking the surface as it vanished. Below! One SEAL barked out in disbelief. Another, crouched against the hull, shouted, "What the hell kind of run was that?" Knox didn't reply. She pulled up just shy of the smoke column, her wingtip trailing mist as it skimmed the rising air above the ocean surface. She regained altitude in a hard climb, rolling level only after the fire plume dropped behind her. No celebration, no confirmation, just a final pass where precision meant survival. They aimed for the wounded ship. She flew through its shadow and cut them off at the edge. The cockpit warning blinked steady red bingo fuel. The message pulsed quietly in the corner of Tessa Knox's HUD, a reminder of limits she'd already passed. She narrowed her eyes. The canopy around her shimmered with residual heat, the salt of the sea crusting faintly along the edges where spray had dried and burned. Inside, the air was hot and thin. The hiss of her oxygen mask filled her ears, even over the subdued whine of the engine spooling down from its last hard pull. She didn't panic, just breathed once, slow and even. Knox reached up and toggled off the wideband radar range, cutting its sweep by half. Comms duplicators off, wingtip cameras off. She adjusted the seat pressure slightly as the harness creaked across her chest. The fuel reading stabilized, just enough for a few more maneuvers. Maybe one more run, 2 if she cut every corner exactly. Her fingers moved automatically, running through the checklist in her head. Auxiliary power diverted to flight trim. Flaps set for mid-speed control. Engine kept just below redline. Barely. She didn't need speed now. She needed time. The radio pinged once an encrypted burst from the SEAL channel. A male voice, tight and breathless. 2 minutes to extraction. East Zodiac inbound, still under pressure. She exhaled through her nose. No emotion, just calculation. On her console, a new message popped up. Deck status request current return vector. Slot availability pending. She didn't open it. Her finger hovered over the input, then tapped the command to delete it. She'd already made her call. Outside, the sky had begun to shift color. The sun hovered low, turning the ocean below into molten bands of gold and gray. Her canopy reflected the light like a closing visor. She whispered it more than said it. "You don't land with hero points." Knox flipped to manual trim. The stick responded like muscle memory, familiar, quiet. Her right boot adjusted rudder position. Her left hand dropped throttle just enough to coast the next angle. Then she banked hard, nose tilting back toward the last vector where the extraction boat was headed and the last threats hadn't yet stopped firing. The warning stayed red. So did her course. The ocean rushed toward her windscreen as Tessa Knox rolled into the descent, the nose of the F-16 slicing downward with final intent. Her HUD flickered faintly, no missiles left, no backup armaments. The weapons board was blank except for the cannon, one yellow bar pulsing against the edge of reserve. That would be enough. It had to be. Her hand adjusted the trim manually, the tension in her wrist visible beneath the glove. The stick fought her slightly. She'd burned the airframe hard on the last pass. Didn't matter. She steadied it. Her breathing had gone shallow now, controlled by instinct and repetition. Below, the final pirate boat knifed through the waves. Narrow hull, twin outboards screaming, and a heavy mount gunner bracing in the back. The Zodiac holding the SEALs bounced just ahead of it, its wake uneven as it veered for open sea. Drake's voice burst through the comms. half cut by engine noise. "We need cover. Now. They've got line on us." Knox didn't answer. She didn't need to. The pirate boat adjusted slightly, lining up. The gunner steadied his aim. Tessa fired. The cannon's burst ripped across the water in a single arc, short, brutal, mechanical. The rounds tore into the skiff mid-turn, hitting just as the gun mount rose into full view. It split the boat in half in one clean stroke, the structure folding inward before a fireball engulfed what was left. Shrapnel flared off the water. The spray shot high, almost vertical, before slamming back into the sea in thick waves. Her jet bucked as she pulled up hard, afterburner choking slightly from the strain. The F-16 cleared the smoke with a low growl, wings angled upward, every surface humming near stall. She climbed anyway, slow and deliberate, bleeding energy as she rose out of the kill zone. Down below, the Zodiac veered clear. One of the SEALs stood briefly, turning to look upward as the jet receded. His voice cracked over the channel, more awe than confirmation. "It's clear. She got it." Drake gave the only order left. "Move, now." The water quieted. The sky thinned. She didn't save the fight. She ended it. The carrier rose slowly into view through the heat shimmer, a flat line against the sea with no welcome waiting. Tessa Knox kept her voice off the radio, hands steady on the stick, the fuel light blinking its final warning. She didn't bother silencing it. The deck was clear. The flight tower gave her an approach vector late, but she was already lined up, already coming in too heavy and too fast. There was no room for flair or finesse. The F-16 hit hard, not recklessly, just real. The arresting cable caught on the second pass, jerking the bird to a halt with a jolt that knocked her shoulder into the harness. She stayed seated for a moment, hands still braced, breath held without knowing it. Then she exhaled. No one came rushing forward. The canopy lifted on its hydraulic hiss. The air hit her face like salt through steel. One deckhand jogged forward, just one holding a bottle of water in one hand. No clipboard, no salute, no expression. He reached up and offered it to her, said nothing. She took it with a nod, popped the cap, drank once, then climbed down the ladder with boots that moved slower than they should have. Every joint felt rubberized, every step exact. Behind her, the jet ticked as it cooled, metal adjusting, vents still whining. No one asked what she'd seen. No one touched her gear. Up in the tower, voices crackled over internal comms. She wasn't cleared. We didn't log her armament. She shouldn't have been airborne. Doesn't matter. She's already down. Who gave the order? No one had. Knox walked alone across the deck, helmet tucked under one arm, water bottle still in her grip. She didn't look at the tower. She didn't break stride. There was no debrief, no questioning. Not yet. They were still catching up to the part where she'd left. Near the ready room. She passed the sortie board. The tape was still gone. Her name never went up. She paused, glanced once, then moved on without stopping. She didn't need the report. She knew what she saw. The ready room hadn't changed. Same overhead buzz from old fixtures, same pale glow on the walls. The scent of jet fuel still hung in the corners, baked in by years of sweat and silence. Captain Tessa Knox sat in the same chair she'd used the day before, but this time the helmet was beside her on the bench, not in her lap. Her uniform was dry, faintly scuffed across the sleeves and collar. No one had offered to clean it. She hadn't asked. The console in front of her powered on with a soft hum. The same mission board rotated through new assignments, none of them hers. Her name wasn't listed on the launch log. It hadn't been added in retrospect. She opened the after-action report with 2 taps. Redacted. The overview credited air asset intervention during pirate engagement. The SEAL team was listed as successfully extracted under hostile fire. Risk level elevated. Resolution timely. No pilot named. No squadron attached. No deviation logged. Knox closed the file without blinking. The hum of the monitor continued, steady and indifferent. Then she saw it. taped at the edge of the screen a small square of paper, slightly curled. Handwritten, blocky print. "Next time, call us sooner." She didn't recognize the handwriting, but it wasn't a command signature. More likely a tech, someone who had seen the radar light up and understood what it meant. She looked at the note for a long moment. No speech, no commentary. Just a faint flicker of a smile, gone almost as soon as it formed. She unscrewed the cap of the same water bottle from the deck, took a single sip, placed it back. Across the room, the door hissed open. A group of Navy pilots walked in, mid-conversation. Their voices dipped slightly when they saw her. No greetings, no salutes, just the briefest change in tone, less sharp, less dismissive. She didn't look at them, and they didn't stop walking. But the room's air felt different now. They knew. She powered down the console. The screen darkened. The sticky note remained. With quiet finality, she picked up her helmet, stood, and walked out of the room alone. The board never changed. But the room did.